Hey there, welcome back. In this video, we're going to be talking about the difference between triggers versus truths, because speaking my truth has become a very common tool for spiritual bypassing, especially in the spiritual community. So I wanted to help bring some clarity on this issue. First and foremost, I want to talk about why knowing the difference between a trigger versus a truth is so important. Because there's a lot of talk and everybody kind of knows that, we're responsible for our words, our actions, our thoughts, how we treat other people. But what a lot of people don't ever talk about is the responsibility for our reactions. And that is so key to your spiritual growth, your inner growth, whatever you want to call it, and how you actually are even showing yourself self-love, quite frankly, because knowing the difference is key. Not lying to yourself or deluding yourself about things is so important and required for you to be able to move forward and push past any blocks you have in any of the areas of your life, whether that's your financial health you're looking to heal, or your physical health, or your relationship health, or whatever area it is. So pay attention to your reactions, and you will also notice that those reactions are a key identifier for where you have work to do also. And you'll also probably, or if you haven't already, run into a lot of people who are constantly projecting their triggers and reactions to things on you. So we'll talk about that in a different video. But for right now, we just want to talk about it. We never ever lay the responsibility of our reactions at the foot of another person. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about here. Whenever you're involved in any kind of a conversation, or whether you're listening and directly involved in the conversation or not, whether you're at a group meeting, maybe a meetup, doesn't really matter, hearing somebody speak about a topic, pay attention to when you hear something that just doesn't resonate and you just kind of let it go, and when you are emotionally triggered by something, because you will feel this intense emotional reaction to it. You will want to say something. You will want to just have the urge to tell them how wrong they are, defend your point and why it's right, all of that. That is a trigger. Your trigger is going to be something that comes easily. That comes more from the mind and the ego. Speaking your opinion about something is very different and much easier to do than speaking your truth or your feelings about something. A feeling, a truth, comes from your heart, and that's going to be a lot harder for you to articulate, because it's going to be triggering some vulnerabilities with it. So it'll probably take some time for you to be able to verbalize it. You won't necessarily even immediately know how to verbalize it. And it doesn't come from a space of defensiveness or aggressiveness. A trigger is just going to be an opinionated, almost immediate response as to why what the other person said was wrong or doesn't apply or whatever. That's the difference, the main difference. So when you hear something that somebody says that you don't agree with, that's fine. You don't have to agree with it. But when you are triggered to the point where you are either attacking them or finding yourself feeling the need to argue with them, that's a trigger. And that is something you will have to work really hard to become aware of and realize that it is not the space, generally speaking, or the time to bring that up. That is your responsibility to look at and see what that triggered for you and what the connection is between what that trigger is for you and what that person was talking about. This is super, super common when we talk about the topic of like religion versus spirituality. I actually was raised religious, and we went to church every Sunday. I know all the stories of the Bible. It was very, even a little bit more extreme religion for some than what some people consider extreme about religion because we grew up as Christian Scientists. Christian Scientists don't believe in going to the doctor. In fact, it's more than just a belief. You are not allowed to go to the doctor. And to keep a long story short, we got out of that when I was fairly young, probably 8 years old. And my mom kind of woke up to the realization that, look, this is just not right. If I can help my kid feel better with some cough medicine, I don't see the big deal in that. So anyway, so the subject of religion is always interesting to me because I actually come from that background and I can see both sides of this argument. So when I used to hear people talking about their religion, it actually did trigger me because my experiences coming from the church were that it's very judgmental. It's constantly seeking basically just to control. It's fear-based. They have people under this sort of mind control, honestly, even though they wouldn't call it that, but this fear-based belief system that if you don't live a certain way, do a certain thing, you're going to hell or you won't get into heaven or whatever. That is just such a fear-based scam, quite frankly, in my personal opinion. But for some people, it's very important to them, and it's their connection to God or whoever their religious being that they identify with is. That's very different from spirituality, which is what I practice now, and that's more your authentic connection to the divine and recognizing that the divine is within you. That connection is with you. It is nobody else's business, and it is certainly not controlled by going through some third party to talk to God on your behalf. Otherwise, you don't get into heaven. So anyway, when somebody says something and talks about religion, it bringing up that trigger for me would just usually evolve into a debate about it, where both people are basically then coming from defensive spaces, trying to prove their point and prove that that they're right and the other person's wrong, which never, ever, ever freaking works. People are very possessive and attached to their belief systems, so this never works. Now, this over time evolved in, as I progressed and grew spiritually, it stopped being a trigger for me because I can recognize this is perfect for them for where they're at. And so it's fine. It has no bearing on me. It's none of my business. It doesn't bother me. So people can talk about religion now and okay, I just let it go. I don't feel the need to prove them wrong or make them see my point or whatever, unless they ask my opinion, and that's a totally different story. So that is a difference between a trigger and a truth. We all face these triggers all of the time. We all have our triggers, and that is part of the gift we are given as far as a compass pointing us in the right direction of where our healing has an opportunity to be done. Because as long as something is triggering such an emotional response from you, there's something that's not healed there. And that is for you to work on. It's not anybody else's responsibility. This obviously gets a lot more complex when we talk about human rights issues and things like that. That's very different. But for right now, when we're talking about people's personal preferences about something, it's not your job to try to convince them otherwise, and it never works anyway. If anything, if I hope if anything has been proven over the last 2,000 years, it's that you are never going to change somebody's mind by attacking their perspective on it and trying to prove them wrong. People shut down, they get defensive, nothing gets done. Obviously, why we have a broken two-party system here. Everybody's just so worked up about pointing out what the other people are doing wrong, and there are big errors on both sides. So when you get triggered, I challenge you over the course of this next week and any time that it happens to look at what that trigger is, and you take the time when you get home to ask the question, okay, what did this trigger for me? What is the connection here? You can ask it a different way. You can ask, what is the opportunity here for growth for me? How can I see this from a different perspective? That phrase almost always yields me fairly quick clarification and clarity and insight on whatever's going on. And you might have to wait a few days until you're not as emotionally charged by it before you ask that question too. Because if you're asking the question when you're in that worked up defensive space, you're really not going to hear the answer anyway. So When you are ready, ask that question, do the work because it is your responsibility, and see what happens. I guarantee you get some massive gift of healing out of that experience, some awareness, a different perception, and that will start shifting things for you. And you'll also be surprised when you notice where that one planted seed, when you get to the root of it, how you see it branch out into all of these seemingly other unrelated areas of your life. And those start to shift too. And then you set yourself free in many different areas and on many different levels when you are able to shift your perception about something. Then you're allowing yourself the opportunity to continue growing and moving in the direction of what you are truly wanting to create in your life and bring into your life. So that's it, and pretty quick and brief topic and summary on truths versus triggers. And feel free to share with me some of your triggers and versus truth experiences. You can email me at Janine@urban-alchemy.org. Have a good day.